heard someone say to me earlier this morning that he's never had a single bad review. And if that's the case, you're probably the most fortunate person sitting in the room right now. So we live in a world right now where every customer that walks through the door is a self-proclaimed critic, right? We can either look at that as a deficit and a real challenge to the industry, or we can also look at it and see the opportunity that's involved. Because if we're able to manage reviews appropriately, we're actually able to take those reviews and provide more value behind our brands. And that's really what I want to talk with you about today, is not getting torn down by the couple of negative reviews that you probably have sitting out there or the ones that you're going to get in the future, but really being able to look at those and see how we can leverage our communication internally and externally to create more value behind our brand and increase the loyalty of the customers we do have. So as Ali was sharing with you, I own several different businesses. To a couple of them that pertain a lot to what we're talking about today, I'm going to talk about just a little bit so you understand I'm not up here preaching from the side of do what I say, not what I do, but really I've applied a lot of the techniques we're talking about today to a couple of the B2C businesses I own, but also coaching some of our clients from the marketing firm on how to handle these as well. So anything you're hearing today has actually been put into practice and has been fine-tuned before even being shared with you. So two of the businesses I wanted to talk about right now and share a couple of short stories with you about. One of them is the food cart business, which is now full-service catering. The other one is a vacation rental business where we own vacation rentals and use Airbnb and Booking.com and similar sites to be able to be our own tiny little hotel chain, if you will. So we deal with B2C customers that are hopefully always happy, but we realize that that's just not the case. There's going to be an accident that happens or a moment where maybe we didn't make magic happen for a customer, which is unfortunate, but we've tackled those. So I've had the good reviews sitting out there, the positive reviews, but some of them that I've taken in have been really negative in form. And I've found that, I guess, two of the best tips I'm going to share with you that we practice internally is number one, we take those positive reviews and reward employees for them, okay? So I'll talk a lot about this topic throughout the course of this hour, is empowering our employees to create moments of magic and then celebrating those employees for acting when the time comes. So when we get a positive review, I'm encouraging staff, complimenting them for what they did really well, but I'm also taking those positive reviews and recycling them. So what do I mean by that? I mean that I'm taking a positive review that maybe was posted on Yelp or Facebook, and I'm taking that positive review and I'm creating a cute little design on it and sharing it on all of our other social media as well as on our website. So I'm using that positive review and shouting it to the world, so hopefully it's a bit louder than a negative review that may come in the future. And when I do that, I oftentimes will make note of an employee that was a part of that positive review. So in the restaurant industry, I think we can all be on the same page that attracting, training, and retaining hourly wage workers is a big challenge for the industry right now. And by encouraging employees to be empowered, but also recognizing the good work that they're doing, I'm taking that external review and really finding value internally with it. The other thing that we've been able to do is simply taking the negative reviews and putting those into training. So when there are staff meetings or moments for education, we're able to really address what happened with the negative review so it doesn't happen again. All too often, we take a negative review and someone maybe handling the social media side is seeing it and dealing with it and reacting to it, but it stops there. So consider if you can take that negative review, of course, address it on the platform that it happened, but use that as an opportunity to really improve the customer service that we're providing. So when we talk about focus on retention, it's not just focus on retention, of course, for our employees, but also our customers. So while I'm talking about managing reviews today, really that's under the umbrella of customer loyalty and building brand ambassadors, so that our brand ambassadors, the positive stories, are out there being told more than the negative stories. There is a company, Voltaire, that had a really unique situation that I'm going to use as a short case study for you, because I'll tell you, the customer is not always right when the review comes in. And what happened in this case was they had a couple come into the restaurant that wanted to have takeout food. And I don't know about each of your individual food businesses, but I do know that some of us like to protect the integrity of the temperature of the food, the presentation of the food, and sometimes when it's taken out the door in a different format, we're setting ourselves up for a negative review because the customer is not having the same experience that we've designed so well for them. So this couple walks into the restaurant and they're perturbed because this restaurant won't allow them to do takeout. And they make a big scene in the restaurant. In fact, the woman's husband comes to back her up on this disgruntled complaint that she has, and makes it very clear that he's a lawyer. So he's a lawyer, and I assume he thought maybe that would mean he gets special treatment. I'm not sure. But they threatened that they would then go to Yelp and make their complaint known to everyone else, that they were just providing really bad service because they weren't allowing a customer to do takeout. Seems maybe silly, but what happened from there is this couple, within 15 minutes, went online, filed a complaint on Yelp, and that's for everyone to see going into the future. So it seems like this could be really detrimental. Well, the owner handled it perfectly. So what he did was he followed a guideline I'm going to share with you in a couple of slides here, but he listened. So he said, I hear you, I hear what your complaint is, but here's why we responded the way we did. And he used it as an opportunity to reinforce the values within his restaurant, talking about the temperature of the food, the presentation of the food, and that they want every customer's experience to be 5-star, and they can't guarantee that if they vary from their practices. So he was actually able to use that as an opportunity to tell his story of why there's such a favorite restaurant in the area. And interestingly, because he had done such a good job building brand ambassadors and relationships with customers, you know what happened next was his customers went online and defended him, saying what a great restaurant this was, how they love the food, how they come back frequently. And so this actually turned into kind of an earned media opportunity for him. So instead of looking at it as a single negative review that he had to deal with and it takes time and energy, and I can't believe this customer said that about us, he saw it as an opportunity to create more value behind his brand. So I'd encourage you to think about that story when you do have a negative review come in about your food business, because there's a lot of different ways we can spin that. We don't have to get argumentative with the customer, but we can use that as a platform to kind of spin the information that is out there. So some of the formulas that are up here, I'm sharing with you because I think there's a general mindset that I'm guilty of as well when promoting my B2C companies. We spend a lot of energy in advertising and marketing dollars trying to find new customers, when really, for less cost, we can be retaining the current customers that we have. So these formulas are a way that you can actually put numbers to that theory, looking at your customer attrition and retention rates, which really complement each other. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the customer lifetime value, because I think if we look at the customer lifetime value, we can see that if a customer is coming through the door and spending $6 a week with us, hopefully they're spending a whole lot more than that, but just for the sake of having a price point to use here, if a customer is spending $6 on a sandwich with us, if we can get them to come back on a weekly basis, and let's say they come back for 5 years, that customer is actually worth $1,500 to our business. So if you think about that one customer that's walking through the door that may have a positive or a negative review to share about you, yes, it's the value of what's going out there to the rest of the world, but it's also the value of $1,500. And what I'd like to share with you is something that I do with, when it was still more of a food cart than a catering service, I would stick a $20 bill in the visor of the vehicles. The reason I did this was because I never wanted an employee to pause or hesitate when there was a moment of magic that could be created. Because to me, a customer, keeping that customer, was worth more than $20 because I would have to spend 5 times that to go out and find a new customer. Okay. So not that you have to have $20 bills stuck under tables, but I'm going to just share that with you as an example of how we can make it more accessible for our employees to create those moments of magic that can then be shared, and to create a customer that is no longer a $6 customer, but a $1,500 customer. So when we talk about the impact of reviews, I'm going to share a statistic with you that positive reviews from a customer can actually create an increase in your brand value by 31%. So what I mean by that is that when a study was done looking at 2 different sets of companies, those with positive reviews, those with negative reviews selling the same product, the positive reviews were able to charge 31% more. So put that in perspective. Think about your gross revenue right now. If someone was able to write you a check today for 31% of your gross revenue, would you take it? If you don't want it, I'll take it for you. So again, thinking about the actual dollars that we're associating with customer retention, because it's all too easy to focus on that new customer acquisition. But by spending a little bit more time and money on our retention, we can actually not only increase the number of visits from those customers, but the amount we're able to charge from our menu. So I know profit margins are not huge for most food businesses. This is one area that can help you widen that gap. So if you own a local business, the sad news I'm going to share with you is that you're even more vulnerable to the negative reviews affecting your bottom line. 90% of customers, when surveyed, say they won't even walk in the door of a local business if they have more negative reviews that they're noticing. Now, if you're in the chain business, good for you, you're not affected quite as much, but negative reviews will still affect you. What I think is important to note here is that local businesses, independently owned businesses, work very hard to keep their business up and running, but unfortunately, that one negative review that's sitting out there may be stopping people from walking through the door, and those same smaller businesses are the ones that maybe don't have the full team that's out there monitoring the reviews as they're happening. So what I suggest to smaller businesses that are trying to manage reviews is to focus on a few of the sites that are out there and do them really well, rather than trying to sprinkle across all of the platforms. Okay? I realize there's not enough time or money in the day for someone to be everywhere at every moment. So some of them that I would put a focus on are Yelp, OpenTable, Facebook, and TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor being the largest travel website in the world right now. It can be a very powerful tool, especially as tourists and travelers are coming in this summer. I understand we get travelers in the winter too, but I think we can all understand summer season is prime for Wisconsin. So with all of these platforms that are up there, you can create free profiles for your business. It costs you nothing except sweat equity to do this, maybe some staff time. So creating and owning a customer profile means that you've already beat someone else to the punch, because not every one of your neighbors even has a profile out there. So creating a customer profile on all of these platforms also allows you to respond to the positive and the negative reviews as they come in. 3 of these sites also allow you to create loyalty programs. Some of them handle mobile payments and even reserving tables. One thing I will share with you that I think is not as widely known about Facebook reviews is there are features to actually disable some of the reviews. There's a lot of conversation out there right now in the industry, I understand, about Yelp and how some of the reviews are either shown or hidden, depending on how much you're paying. I can't speak to that on why Yelp does that, but I can speak to the fact that on Facebook, you're able to disable reviews. Now, what I mean by that is that if you have a 4.5 rating out there, and a couple of bad reviews, but mostly positive reviews, I don't think it would be worth disabling that feature, okay? Your positive reviews are going to speak louder than your negative reviews. However, I have worked with a couple of businesses where their reviews have hit such a low point, maybe because of something that happened during a very short season. Something happened with their product or their staffing or similar, and they just took in an abundance of negative reviews. So what they've done is gone in and just disabled reviews completely, so they're just coming in as comments. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Because that feature is out there, there's also some more speculation, I would say, around Facebook reviews and how valid they are when you're checking out a restaurant. Yelp and TripAdvisor tend to be the top 2 for when people are traveling in the state of Wisconsin, of where they would go to find out about a local restaurant before they dine there. Yes?
I'm getting more and more on Google Business.
Yeah.
And the biggest frustration is at least half or more of them are just the star rating and no comments. And it's very difficult to reply to a 3 or a 4 when you always want a 5 if you have no idea why they only give you a 3.
Yeah, it's true, and it's definitely one of the challenges with the platform right now, I would say. I guess one thing I would suggest is even in a profile, stating really clearly that feedback is always welcome, and the more details they can provide you, the more you can correct things to make it more suitable for their preferences. Recognizing the review, thanking them for it. 2 steps I would do on a negative or a positive review, either way. But you're right, it is a challenge that's happening right now. It's one of the most frustrating, I think, because even if we get a 5-star review in, we're looking at it saying, great, but what did we do so we can do it again, right? But we get a negative review in and want to use that as a learning opportunity for our team. It's really tough to use that as a training tool if we don't know exactly what it was that caused that negative review. I empathize with you, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So is OpenTable a good platform if your restaurant doesn't take reservations or things like that? Should you really be watching reviews on there if people aren't using that to find your restaurant?
Good question. So even if you're not going to be using all of the features of a platform, I would still suggest creating a profile so that the first thing someone sees is what you want them to see. And I do a lot of teaching and training on creating brand ambassadors, and I'll tell you one of the biggest challenges that some businesses are having right now is getting it started to create brand ambassadors, because they don't have tools out there for their customers to easily access and use. So by providing that customer or that business profile, at least, you're giving them something to use and identify with. Okay, so this slide right here, if you take nothing else away from you today, this slide and the next slide, if you have a pen, again, I'm happy to send you this PowerPoint so you have access to it, but the next 2 slides can help you be really objective and calm and collected when dealing with potentially that negative review that comes in. So I've laid out a series of steps here for you. And I'll tell you, even when I'm dealing with reviews, positive, they're easy breezy. Sometimes with a negative review, I have to remind myself of these steps too. So I first listen, meaning I don't just hear something, but I really listen to what the customer is trying to tell me, okay? What is the actual stemming cause of the complaint that they're making? And then I take that information before responding and I go and gather more information about it. So if it had to do with a customer service situation, or maybe it had to do with a food quality situation, I'm going to that appropriate person and finding out what exactly did happen. Now that's more challenging sometimes when you get the review in 3 months after something happened, but if it's a timely review, I absolutely go gather more information before ever responding, because unfortunately there are some people out there that just had a bad day and you're just going to be their outlet for their anger at the moment. So rather than overreacting to something, I gather the information and then I take that information to make a judgment call on how valid is the complaint that came in and what is the real issue that it stemmed from, and what is the solution that I'm going to use to improve that experience the next time around. And so when responding to the complaint, the negative review, I'm able to address those key points very objectively. Mr. Customer, I hear what you're saying, right? So I listened. After reading your review, I went and spoke with X team within our company. This is why that happened. We apologize. I'm empathizing. I'm recognizing what the situation was. Here's what we're going to do to make sure that doesn't happen to you or anyone else in the future. So that's how I would respond if there is a negative review. We did make a mistake. It's going to happen. Is I'm taking that information in before responding to it. I'm gathering the information from my team, and then I'm responding by telling them proactively what we're going to do in the future to improve that experience. And this is just a really nice little cheat sheet, I think, to keep in front of us so we don't go from point 1 to point 5 without taking the middle steps. And then what I do is follow up with the customer. Your comment that you just shared with us about how you take that extra time to reach out to the reviews and get more information, I think that's awesome. It fits right in with this. It does take time. And so whether it's you or you have someone on your team that can dedicate that time, putting a little marker in your calendar so that you follow up with that customer, that's your opportunity for making magic happen again. How many times have you posted a review, maybe a negative complaint about a company, and that was the end of it? But now what if that company reached out to you 30 days later and said, have you been back into our restaurant and what was your experience? Now all of a sudden I'm a person that mattered to that business. So I do think that the follow-up is where the opportunity lies to actually turn the situation, because not a whole lot of businesses are doing that right now. It's also an opportunity when I see that on my calendar to be able to go to that staff person or team member and check in with them to see how are we doing to improve whatever that mistake was that was happening. Sometimes the negative reviews or experiences that happen are at such a level that I would consider them to be a crisis. And so we talk about crisis management. Can I just ask, how many of you have a crisis management plan for your business? Couple. Okay. Crisis management could be needed at any moment. Well, we're sitting right here in this room. Something could be happening back at our businesses that's going to require a crisis management plan. Because when a crisis, depending on the scale, but when a crisis happens, there's not time to think about what the next step is going to be. It's important to have the plan in place so everyone knows what their role is and we can respond in a timely fashion. I think the key things to keep in mind here is when it escalates to a crisis level, is that we recognize the top priorities are to protect people and property, to protect survival of the business and the brand, and to communicate quickly and effectively. Okay? So I've laid out a couple of steps here for you. Making the plan being the very first step, and maybe that's the take home for everyone. So there's usually 3 things you can take away from any conference like this and actually remember and apply, because we just don't have the time or capacity to do many more than that. So I would really encourage you, make that one of your 3 items that you take back to the office this week. So making a plan, but identifying a spokesperson. So what happens if you're sitting in this room and a crisis is happening back at your business? Does everyone know who's going to respond to the customer and to the media as that happens? Or could you potentially have an employee picking up the phone and responding in a way other than what you had intended? So being transparent is really important on this, but informing our employees and our customer of what's happening is key, because otherwise that's where the rumors start happening. That's where things start going viral with maybe misinformation. So I don't just mean communicating out to the general public and the consumers, but I also mean internally with our employees. So potentially you've all heard stories where employees will walk in and see a sign on the door that the business is closed either for good or because something happened. It's the worst crisis management plan that could possibly be out there. Communicating with our employees means that they can be internal ambassadors for us too. Providing them with exactly what they can say is a powerful tool, because they're going to be asked by friends and family if this is a highly covered topic happening in your local news. So providing them with the exact words that they can post on their social media, that they can say verbally when asked, allows them to respond in a way that has continuity across all of our employees. And the updates and monitoring social media steps, I would say, are important because as much as our employees are our internal ambassadors, we also have the opportunity to get the information out there and respond very quickly. Did anyone see the story where, what is the show called? This Is Us. They just had an episode where it was a huge uproar on social media because they thought the dad had died because of a slow cooker that was used. Does anyone see this? Okay, so, I mean, this is a very fictional show that's happening, but then it gets over to an actual real-world product. Guess what? They had to have a crisis management plan in place because a TV show addressed something that they were selling. Well, what happens if you're selling euros and a fictional TV show starts talking about something bad about euros? And I'm just using that as an example. But so even if it's not our own actions, crisis can actually be created from all these external sources too. And they responded very well, actually, very quickly, and spun the story. Hopefully you find those steps useful when you're creating your own crisis management plan. So I'm going to share a couple of other reviews with you here. Negative reviews that were actually able to be turned a little bit. So this one here stems from a business that serves a lot of fish product and teas and coffee. So cute little cafe. Was fielding some complaints about their salmon. Well, turns out there was an issue through the supply chain that happened. Have we all been there where a food product comes in and maybe something was wrong with the product that we got? Hopefully someone on the team catches it before it goes out to the customer, but it does happen. So out of their control in this case, but still reflected on them as a business. So what they did was they were very transparent with their customers, and they said, hey, this is what happened, okay? So we're not trying to say, you were wrong, our salmon is always delicious. What they were saying is, you know what, there was a mistake in our supply chain. thank you for letting us know. So they heard, they acknowledged what the situation was, and they were actually able to correct the problem then. So they saved themselves a whole lot of negative reviews and lost customers in the future by being able to monitor the reviews that were happening online and quickly address it with their distributor. So there's a lot of value to be had in monitoring those reviews out there. If you have someone on your team, maybe an entry-level member of your team handling social media, I see that happen quite a bit in the industry. We just assign social media to someone and they handle it, but that information isn't always coming back to someone that can do something with the information. That's a real problem, because if they had taken that complaint and just said, thanks, we'll try to do better next time, imagine how many more customers were going to be served that same salmon over the course of the next couple of days. So having the left arm speak with the right arm, extremely important here. So I said earlier, customers are not always right, and this is a prime example of it. They're out in New York. If you've ever traveled to New York, especially larger cities, you might be able to recognize that you have to have your whole party present to be sat. Even here in Wisconsin, a lot of restaurants will do this. So if you have a reservation for 6 people and 2 people show up, we're going to let you sit in the lobby or at the bar, wait for the rest of your party to show up before being sat. Well, that exact scenario played out in a restaurant in New York where 2 people showed up. The other 4 people were out wandering the city at that point. Who knows if they were lost or they got distracted by shiny objects. But their party never showed up entirely. So 2 women walked in, and they were told they couldn't be sat. They were upset by this. But the owner and the manager were both there to let them know that this is our policy, this is why we do it. Well, 30 minutes goes by almost, and the rest of their party still isn't there. And there's a line out the door. We've all been there, right? You have a line of customers that want to buy from you, and you're holding up a table that is worth dollars every minute that goes by. Well, after 30 minutes past the reservation, they gave the table away and explained to the 2 women why this happened, hoping that they would understand, but they didn't. They went to social media and started making complaints within minutes of walking out the door. Okay. It's unfortunate that we can't set guidelines for when our customers file complaints. It could be because they just had a bad day. In this case, the owner, again, a great story of finding the opportunity, was able to use that as a platform. So rather than hide from it, use this as a platform and moment and opportunity for learning with their customers and share again why they have this policy in place. And imagine all those people that would have been waiting even longer or wouldn't be able to dine with them that night because that table was sitting empty. So it's not always fair. This game is not fair out there. But I think rather than looking at it as just a challenge and a blow to our image, we can actually use it as an opportunity for, again, restating our policy. And the policy is in place because we want every customer's experience to be perfect. When I talk about brand ambassadors earlier, really what I'm talking about is influence marketing. Influencer marketing is something that each of your businesses can leverage to create more value for your brand out there and have people telling the story for you. So when those negative reviews come in, they're diluted a little bit by what's going on with the rest of your messaging. So looking at our current customers is a natural way to find brand ambassadors, but I'll tell you that there are other partners in this industry too that we can lean on. So we have our supply chain and our value-added influencers. And what I mean by that is our supply chain. So think of your distributors and your manufacturers that you're working with. They can be telling your story either about the product that you're using from them or about your business specifically even, and it's now coming from someone else's mouth. It's not you selling the value of your own brand, it's someone else talking about the value of your brand, which can be a powerful tool. And when I talk about the value-added influencers, these are going to be your local media, these are your bloggers. This is all of the content creation that's happening out there in the world that we don't actually control. So it's not what's happening on your own social media pages, it's what's happening by third-party generated content. So years ago, I actually used to be in the broadcast industry, and we would get faxes in with press releases and invitations to grand openings. The method for that is quite a bit different now. People are going out and tweeting at each other, for instance, saying, here's what's going on, to get that information covered. But it's still the same premise. So if you think back to maybe some of you were in this business when we were still faxing press releases, think of it the same way, except we're just going to a different platform to provide that information for someone else to share. And that's really what creating brand ambassadors and influencer marketing is all about, is providing people with enough tools that they can tell your story. One thing I would actually suggest too on this topic is that we make certain nuggets of information available through our social media, but also on websites. So that if there is either a crisis management situation or maybe you have a really positive story to be shared, even having things such as your logo in a way to be downloadable, a couple of photos that are out there, your mission vision statement, those are simple things that reporters or bloggers can pull from your site and really use to tell the story in the words you want them to be using. So having a digital media kit is an important tool if you're going to go after earned media and influencer marketing. And so when we look at the who, where, and why, it's really about identifying who are going to be the influencers that we're talking with. Now this doesn't mean you have to go out into your restaurant and start bribing people and handing out freebies to get them to tell your story, okay? This just means that when you see someone talking about your business, maybe you get a positive review, you get a positive comment on one of your social media pages, rather than just thanking them for that, what if you took it a step further and invited them to try, maybe it's a new entree of yours, or it's a new happy hour that you're doing. I participated recently in something like this that a restaurant hosted in Madison, Wisconsin, where because they knew that we had social influence out there, right? Had a nice following on social media, invited a few of us in to try a new product that they had. Well, guess what I did? I loved it. I was posting everywhere on social media about this. So by identifying a few of your customers that have that social network and following up with them and sharing the content that you want them to provide out there, you're making it easy for them. These aren't paid endorsements either. I don't want to get that confused. All I'm really talking about doing is going out there and finding a few people that are already loving your product and inviting them to take it to the next step. And ideally, I mean, these customers are going to be doing our marketing jobs for us. How do I want to say this? If I tell you something about my business, how skeptical are you going to be if it's true or not? You might take it at face value, but if I say, I have the best restaurant in the state of Wisconsin, does that sound credible? No. Now, what if your best friend or your spouse says, that was the best restaurant I have dined at in the last 5 years? Are you going to go try it? Mm-hmm. So by working with these influencers out there, we're actually able to have our same story mean something completely different when it's received. I'm going to open the floor up for questions. We have a little bit of time here before you're scheduled to be anywhere else, but I'm willing to go beyond that too. So let's open the floor for some general questions that would pertain to the whole group. If you have really specific questions about your business, I'm happy to hop off and have that conversation with you. Or you can go to the website that's listed up there to sign up for a one-on-one. Really, I do want to be able to help you to apply some of what we're talking about. to your businesses to create that extra value. Go ahead.
How do you handle reviews where everything is terrible? The food was bad, the prices were high, there was kids screaming, everything was awful, I'll never be back again.
That's a tough one, and it does happen out there. I think one of the things I would do, depending on the platform, I always respond, yeah. At least to thank them for dining with us, at the very least. However, depending on what platform it's on, I may actually try to look at their profile to see who I'm dealing with first and cater the response that way. But I would still go through those same steps that I talked about, even though it just sounds like someone had a bad day. I would take that as an opportunity to check in and see maybe something did happen. Maybe our team was having a bad day and something was wrong with it. But some of what you just said right there, I think comes down to managing expectations too. So if someone is talking about your price point after they dined with you, where did the disconnect happen? Because and I shouldn't assume, I guess, but is your pricing listed somewhere before they order on a menu? Right. So I think managing expectations is important so that we're not saying, for instance, we serve the biggest burger in the state of Wisconsin, and that's why we charge $15, okay? And then they walk in and they get a 4-to-1 patty. See the difference in expectation there that you set yourself up for. But yeah, I would still go through the steps. There's some habitual complainers that are out there. Is anything being done right now to prevent them from being able to post complaints, basically? I will tell you a couple of tips to respond with. One is that you can actually, on each of these sites, basically file a complaint yourself internally to have it reviewed, okay? Because you're right, sometimes there's no credibility behind it, behind the review that's happening. But you brought up a good point that, you know, we're getting these negative reviews, but we as business owners, and it affects our livelihoods of our business. When was the last time anyone in this room posted a positive review? Within the last week, let's say? Okay, so a few people, but not everyone. So I think as an industry, that's something we can do differently. We can start posting positive reviews when we have excellent customer service, when we have an excellent dining experience somewhere. I'll tell you, on one of the social media pages I have for a business, we actually will do exactly that even on our own social media page or from our account, and say we were dining somewhere else. We were out of town dining at this restaurant. How cool this experience was, or something really specific about them. And I think that's, I mean, whether you do it from your business account or even from your personal account, that's something we can do as an industry, is start to recognize the moments of magic when they're happening so that our stories are being louder than all of the negative ones that are coming in, which is going to be a challenge. Absolutely. So what do you think about that challenge? Can you all find something good to say about a company out there in the next week? Post a positive review. Hope the pay it forward happens. Let's see, you've had your hand up for a little while, and then I'll come back to you.
Employee that we didn't promote and how they decided to put a bunch of terrible reviews, which look to the outside like a customer, and so they don't get flagged or taken down. Like, how do you respond to things like that?
So number one, I would try not to get combative, okay, because that's just going to escalate the situation. But I would go back to the 5-step process. I would gather the information, and guess what? During the gathering of the information, you find out this is a relative of a former employee. So I think it's fair that you address that, but not say she's posting it because it was her daughter that lost her job. I don't think I would go that far with it. I wouldn't talk about, and I don't think that's ethical to do that, to share an employee's work history on there. But I could say, you could acknowledge the fact that, you know, we're glad that you're still dining with us after your daughter was an employee with us. Don't have to say she was let go or anything like that. Yeah. And I think someone reading that can read between the lines a little bit. You had a question back there?
Two for you. One, Is there anyone that you know of, or I would encourage anybody who's entrepreneurial to have like a Hootsuite of restaurant reviews so that I can go to one platform and see the reviews from all the different platforms in one space? It would be great. And then two, at what point do you ever encourage people at some point to take the conversation offline?
Yes. And thank you for asking that. I don't think I was saying it very clearly earlier when I was talking about even following up. Some of those follow-ups I was talking about wouldn't necessarily be always posting publicly. So I may address the situation with a kind of canned response, if you will, after gathering the right information about it. But I do take it offline quite often, either through direct messaging or inviting them to email or to call in some cases too. And I especially do that if I'm going to provide, say, a gift card for them to come back in to try something. One of the biggest mistakes, and I'm guilty of this, I made this mistake myself. Last year, I made the mistake of hopping on in the middle of a busy day, responding to a review quickly. Oh my gosh, they weren't happy with this. I didn't even follow my own guideline on this. I responded to it quickly and said, you know what, come right back in this afternoon. We'll get you set up with a $10 gift card so you can come back and either use it at that moment or use it in the future. We pulled in 3 more negative reviews within 24 hours. Because I was giving out free gift cards, basically, encouraging people, and it was my own mistake. But yes, I would especially take it offline if I'm going to offer things like that, because otherwise I'm just incentivizing the situation. Yeah.
Is that common practice to give out a gift card, a follow-up, or?
Well, in the case I'm talking about, we did have an issue with something that happened, and rather than just pocketing the dollars that had been transacted, we thought, you know what, please come back and try us again. Instead of refunding in that situation, we just gave them a new gift card to use, which they were happy with. I mean, that's what ended up happening. But yeah, it is kind of common practice, I would say, that if you screw up, you screw up. I mean, we're not hiding from it. The fact is, we're going to have mistakes. This is an art form that we're in. And so if we serve something that wasn't up to par, or the customer service wasn't exactly how I want it to be, I want that person to come in. And in fact, I want to go the extra step so that my response stands out to them. There's a theory that's out there that if a customer comes in your door every day and has an okay experience, doesn't really interact with anyone, you might get their business for a while until something shinier opens up next door. But if a customer comes in your door, has a negative experience, but your reaction to it was so unique and positive, you now stand out in their mind. So you create that lifetime customer at the moments of weakness because you're standing out with a really unique response. So I'd highly encourage taking advantage of those moments. Mm-hmm.
There seems to be a cottage industry of people who went to your restaurants and maybe had a great experience, but they just followed the email. Oh, I'm not looking for a gift card, but, or they didn't even go to your restaurant, they were just shopping for gift cards. How do you ID or present or be able to just...
So you are asking about people that email in and actually reference a gift card. Some asking for it, or some even saying, I don't need it, but they still make mention of. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say it depends case by case. If you can tell and you're reading through the lines, this is someone that's just out there fishing for gift cards, I might be more willing to give them a certificate where it is a % off, or a buy one, get one situation, rather than here's a gift card, come in and eat for free. So if you're willing to come spend more money with me, great. I'll buy you a drink after your meal, right? So skin in the game on both sides might be a good medium. You're gonna get people fishing out there. Yeah, we can't prevent that, of course, but yeah, it's tough because it ruins it for the people that are actually having a bad experience and need to be compensated for it.
What's the time frame you recommend for responding to guest complaints?
Yeah, I would say within 2 business days. So if your business is closed over, I don't know, let's say you're closed on Monday and Tuesday, it's okay to wait until Wednesday in that case. But I use that same rule of thumb for any type of feedback or social media interaction that comes in. I actually like to see it in 6 hours normally, but I would say if you go past 2 days, you've waited too long to really optimize what you can get out of it too.
Our company standard is 24 hours, but immediate.
Yeah, immediate is great.
And we've gotten some great customer reviews coming back and saying, wow, I just sent this in 10 minutes ago. And you can really one-up your guests by, really getting there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, right away is, of course, preferred. But I also recognize not every business has the resources in someone dedicated to responding to those. So if you're in the middle of a lunch rush, or you're an Irish pub and it's St. Patty's Day, do not take someone off the floor to go respond to those. Perfectly okay to respond tomorrow if you need to.
And we actually use Chat Meter, which brings everything together onto one platform. So you can take a look at that. But every day we get an email with every single location, every single Yelp, TripAdvisor, Facebook, Google, everything all at once. And then you can respond through that too, so it's pretty slick.
It's a great suggestion. Chat Meter, yep. And there are a few different monitoring platforms out there, and that is a good one to be using. The key there is you have to actually be monitoring and willing to respond. Well, you've been a fantastic audience. Thanks for starting your day with me.